Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Monday morning, progressives. Yes, it's Monday morning. Welcome to this March 17th, 2025 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Yes, you can email me at richard@wcpt820.com. And I'm also over there at Substack. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify. There you can get Choose Views, short versions and long versions. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez. The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and our other shows and interviews. Check us out at the heartlandsignal.com digital platform because there's lots of good stuff there. Today, we've got a lot with us with our show. We will have with us, let me get this over here so I've got it right. We got one of our state representatives that's going to be with us at in the 7 o'clock hour. Let me have that real quick, Dev. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, in our 7 o'clock hour, we've got our state representative, Tracy Katz-Mule, will be with us to talk about conservation, talk a little bit about water, talk a little bit about our environment. And then in the 7:30 hour, we'll have Mike Nellis, who's been with us before. And we're going to chat a little bit about what's happening with the Dems right now. And you get the picture. But that's where we're going to be today. Looking forward to having them on. And then through the course of the week, tomorrow we'll have Josh Haston, Elliot Richardson, potentially Greg Palast, still working on that last minute. Wednesday, Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 will be with us. We will be talking with Kurt Herner on Thursday, Mike Williams on Thursday, Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics, and Mike Greenberg. So we got a pretty busy week, as always. We're keeping it going, keeping it active, and hoping you guys had a good weekend. Speaking of the weekend that we just had, St. Patrick's Day. For those who were able to get out and about, I'm sure you had some good fun. At least that was my goal on Friday, Devin, is to let everybody know to get out and have a good time and be safe, but get out and enjoy all the things that Chicago brings. And of course, we are known for our dyeing, painting, coloring of the river. It's a big deal, and folks all over and from all over know about it and come to check it out. So it's nice that we can do it. It's nice when the weather kind of holds up. We did get that rain this weekend, surprisingly, and it's kind of those non-sticking snow flurries for those that didn't make it out and about yesterday. But I guess the moisture is good for us, and today we're going to have a pretty easy day. It's going to get up into the 40s as the day goes by, but we're slowly, Devin, step by step, getting closer to spring, which hits on Thursday, the 20th. It'll be here, the calendar-wise. That doesn't mean that the weather will. I mean, we've seen this. I've told this story before to so many people back in the high school days of playing basketball. And depending on how far we went in the basketball season, and I know some of you guys can, ladies and men, not just men, but can appreciate this. Depending on how far we went in the basketball tournament, would determine when track season started. Because I ran track as well. So it'd come out of playing basketball and being indoors and, nice, warm basketball gymnasium to springtime track, which, track season typically started the first week of April, last week of March, roughly. But there were inevitably those times, Devin, where basketball season ended and track season started, and then you felt like that you were still in the winter, even though it was the beginning of spring. So I remember many beginning of the track seasons where we practiced in the gymnasium because it was too cold to go outside, and track meets where, it was 50 degrees out. Yeah. So there you go. That's going to high school in the upper Midwest. And so my point of all that is we could see that like any year here in Chicago or the upper Midwest where it was it was 70 degrees on Friday. This Friday it could be 40 and it could be the first full day of spring. But either way, that's the excitement about the weather changing and us getting into spring. And, you know, for those who dig baseball and all the spring sports, that's always around us. So we'll always look forward to that. And here we are. So glad to be with you. And like I said, I hope everyone had a good St. Patrick's Day weekend. And I think today is literally the St. Patrick's Day, the 17th. Is that right, Dev? Yeah, I thought so. Dev's got his green on still. He's still celebrating because it's the day. So why not do that? But for now, we will take you guys over to a little bit of Choose Views news, let you know what's happening and some things that went down over the weekend. Deadly storms. That was one of the big stories, of course. Killed at least 36 people after severe storms and tornadoes tore through parts of the Midwest and South on Friday and Saturday. Extreme weather injured 32 people in Arkansas, knocked out power for hundreds of thousands, and triggered fatal wildfires in Oklahoma. Around 10 million people in 6 states are still under tornado watches, from central and eastern Tennessee to the Florida Panhandle. Wind advisories were posted for another roughly 83 million people, especially in the middle part of the country. Work days are ending early. Americans are working shorter days compared to 2 years ago, according to Bloomberg. While the average day wraps up around 4:39 p.m., 36 minutes earlier, productivity is up by 2%, with employees working in focused 24-hour minute bursts. Weekend work is also becoming more popular as many welcome the flexibility to finish tasks earlier. ActiveTrack recommends companies balance productivity with employee well-being as work habits continue to shift post-pandemic. It's about efficiency. It doesn't mean that, that it takes necessarily the same amount of time and folks can get it done quicker. They still should get. That's why I say wages are a big part of the solution to inflation. Not solving inflation, but solving the cost of things. Raise people's wages. And if people's wages are up, then not that inflation shouldn't go down, but if those were working in an inverse relationship where inflation goes down and wages go up, I don't know. Makes sense to me. How nicknames may weaken brands. What is a name? Plenty. Of course, when it comes to corporate nicknames such as Beamer for BMW, or Beamer for BMW, and Mickey D's for McDonald's, a new research suggests companies should be careful about embracing them for marketing purposes. The study has said, according to the Wall Street Journal, that when brands adopt these nicknames, it can diminish their perceived, quote, power. Studies show that using nicknames in official corporate campaigns can hurt share price and customer engagement. I get it. I guess I can get it. PepsiCo is in talks to buy Poppi, and I found this really interesting. Interested in the healthy soda market, showing no signs of fizzling. That meaning that the interest is still up. PepsiCo is in advanced talks to buy Poppi. The deal valued at more than $1.5 billion could be announced as soon as next week. The potential acquisition follows PepsiCo's decision to cancel its own functional soda, Soul Boost, amid signs it wouldn't succeed. Healthier sodas like Poppi are, quote, on fire, and sales are up more than 60% from last year. So, there you go. Guess who's dominating the older music streaming, Devin? Young cats like you or old heads like me? If you consistently find yourself ignoring the pop charts and dialing up nostalgic favorites on Spotify, you're not alone. According to data from Luminate, roughly half of the songs streamed in 2024 were at least 5 years old. The trend is particularly prevalent in genres, like rock, where nearly 3/4 of songs streamed last year were deep catalog. Golden oldies haven't completely taken over the airwaves. However, songs from the 2010s represent nearly 30% of listening. So that's not really that old, but I get it. And CFOs are frontline amid the tariffs, and this is one that caught my eye as well. The spotlight is shifting to chief financial officers amid looming tariffs. These executives must seek to mitigate the impact of new duties on working capital, or cash flow, as it were. Inventories, for example, have been rising fast as companies stockpile products ahead of the time. The pace at which the firms collect payments and make them is also likely to be affected, along with the finances of suppliers. Just keeping tabs on various impending duties will require additional attention. That's so true, because if you reduce the people that are there to help solve some of these problems, you're going to put more pressure on the people who have to solve them. And as it relates to tariffs, if those tariffs continue to impact how businesses are going to operate, it's going to put more pressure on the people that are still working at those companies. So there you go, Dev. Monday morning, y'all. Here we are. It's Monday, the 17th of March, 2025. This is Choose Views. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. We will be right back.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Welcome back, progressives, to Choose Views. Thanks for being with us this morning. So last week, at the end of the week, we talked about the vote, and we talked about how the Senate came down on this vote, and we talked a lot about Chuck Schumer. So I have a question, and then there's a clip that I want you guys to hear that Devin and I put together that I think it's funny, but it's also very appropriate as it relates to fighting. This is a question that I'd like, when you guys call in, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think, and I won't necessarily state my opinion, but I read a really good article in the Daily that asked the question, or made a statement, I should say, but I'm going to ask a question, and that's this. Do you think, or how do you feel, do you think that Democrats are in disarray right now? The Democratic leaders and elected officials in disarray, or do you think that there is, that they are not in disarray? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and then your reasoning one way or the other. I'm curious. I mean, what is your observation or your perception or how you're feeling about it is probably as important as anything. Because I think a lot of times we don't do anything until it feels a certain way. But that being said, I want to hear what you guys have to say about that throughout the course of the show. Just give us a call. Certainly you can text that your response. But if you're up for a phone call, hit us up and we'll chat a little bit about it. Do you think Dems are in disarray, or do you think that's BS? Let me know. Just I'm here to hear it. So the clip I was talking about is this. Senator Mark Kelly posted this, I thought it was a pretty cool video, where he talks about a change that he's made, that I've made as a big push, big suggestion. You've seen a lot of protests in this space. And I think that he took the position that a lot of people can take, and I've said should take, and hopefully more will take it. But we've got this clip from Senator Mark Kelly on getting rid of his Tesla.
Folks, Mark Kelly here in Washington, driving to work for the last time in my Tesla. When I bought this thing, I didn't think it was going to become a political issue. Every time I get in this car in the last 60 days or so, it reminds me of just how much damage Elon Musk and Donald Trump is doing to our country. Talking about slashing Social Security, cutting healthcare benefits for poor people, for seniors. It's one bad thing after the next. He's firing veterans. I'm a veteran, so I have a really hard time driving around in this thing. So I think it's time for an upgrade today. So this is going to be my last trip in this car. There are some things I really liked about it. There are things I didn't like about it. But that doesn't matter. What matters is, doing the right thing. I think it's time to get rid of it. Elon Musk kind of turned out to be and I don't want to be driving the car built and designed. So Looking forward to my new ride.
So a little bit of laughter, a little bit of levity this morning. And in case you want to know what he said, I'm going to say it on the air. No, I'm not. Devin's like, I'm ready, Rich. Go ahead. I dare you. He's like, ready. I got the button. The thing that you sit on, the 3-letter word, and sometimes we dig them when we're planting a garden. How about that? Is that okay, Dev?
Sure.
I mean, didn't say the word, man. I just kind of worked my way around it. The 3-letter word for what we sit on. And when you're planting a garden, you have to do this. You have to dig one of these to plant the seeds. You guys figure it out. But the point is, the bigger point is that Senator Mark Kelly, as he has been known to do, he took a stand. He said, I'm getting rid of this. I'm looking forward to my new ride, whatever that may be. He may buy any of the number of other EVs that are out there or a hybrid because he's an environmental concerned person that happens to be one of our senators. And it's not complicated. It's not hard to do that. It really isn't. And I know many people will say, but Richard, yeah, I'm not a senator. I don't have the whatever to you do if you choose to, I believe. No one gets your undies in a bundle on that, and no disrespect. If you want to make a statement, as many hundreds of people, thousands now, hundreds of thousands of people across the globe have made it clear that they're not down with Tesla. The protests at the dealerships, the people that are returning them, et cetera, it's something that if you are a progressive liberal Democrat and you believe in the things that we are talking about and we believe in the things that we want to see to go forward, and you are absolutely PO'd at the fact that this dude is raping and pillaging, not literally, but raping and pillaging our resources in an unrestricted way, then this is how you have to stand. This is where you have to be. This is why you have to be willing to say, you know what? It matters more to me to stand behind and what I believe in and what I say I believe in and stand on business than it does to, own this vehicle. And that's not to say, and let me give you an example. Someone sent me this text last week during the show on the show text line, and I got it from a personal friend, that last week we were talking about this whole thing around Tesla, Trump turning the White House lawn into a Tesla dealership. And some people said, well, yeah, but Joe Biden went and drove a Ford Lightning, but he didn't drive it on the White House lawn. He didn't try to sell one on the White House lawn. He went in support of the unions. That's what his objective was. And you remember that, Devin. He didn't drive one around, D.C. So it's not so much that, people have to, I don't know, I guess you can't recklessly get rid of your Tesla, but I think it's you can't stand on business in one way and then drive around in this billboard for Tesla, particularly when this dude is, raping and pillaging our resources that are so important to so many of our Americans. So good on you, Mark Kelly, for looking forward to your new ride, whatever that's going to be. Probably will be some sort of an EV, knowing his background. But he's calling it out by doing something that's live, not Memorex. I asked the question earlier if the people feel that the Dems are in disarray. I've gotten a couple texts that say, yes, they are. This is interesting because one of the texts that I received said that AOC and Fetterman even noted it passionately. Well, interestingly enough, the two of them are kind of on opposite sides of some things. Fetterman. So this is where I'm going next before we get to the bottom of the hour. I don't know. I want to get this squeezed in. I'll do this after we come back. But I want to talk about this disarray topic. And then I'll tell you what's interesting about one of the texts that I received about AOC and Fetterman, because they're on opposite sides of certain things. Fetterman is leaning in with the Republicans, where AOC is like they're stinky. So the different, and one's in the House of Representatives and one's a senator. Fetterman's really been stinking up the place. Let's be honest. AOC has not, based on the work that they're doing and the stands that they're taking and the votes that they leaned into. But that being said, when we come back from the break, I'm going to talk about that. We're not. I don't want to. Didn't mean to startle you, Devin. We're not going to jump to it early, but I do want to talk about that because you'll be surprised. Maybe not surprised. You'll maybe just be a little bit more informed with something I'm going to share with you. All right. Tom Emmer is a congressman from the great state of Minnesota, and he showed how either ill-informed, I'm not going to call him stupid, Devin, but how ill-informed he is on something. And we have a clip that Devin and I put together that is part of our Heartland Signal on X platform. So as always, make your way over to Heartland Signal. Our articles and our posts are great there. We've got the one that we played from J.B. Pritzker on his political future. We've got South Dakota House Assistant Majority Leader talking about the hurt from Doge is just going to have to be what it's going to be. We're going to have to go through some hurt. That one is just, it's almost incomprehensible what these guys are talking about. But I want you to hear this clip that we have over at heartlandsignal.com that you guys can pull up for yourselves and check out and pass on from Minnesota Republican Representative Tom Emmer.
By the way, Al, I was having this conversation with the president on Monday night. I was telling him, he asked how the tariffs, what I thought. I told him, it's a mixed bag. You got people who this is going to cause them some pain. You got other people who are all excited because guess what? Their competition now has to compete on a level playing field. And then I said, I got this really the most incompetent executive in the country by the name of Timmy Walz, who goes out and makes a public statement because he hates Donald Trump, that Donald Trump hates the farmer. Well, I got news for you, Tim. The farmers don't like you because you've never done anything for them. You have been Minneapolis-centric for 6 bleeping years. And guess what? You don't give a darn about the farmer. Donald Trump does because he sees how they're being mistreated by our friends. He's fighting. By the way, when people say, yeah, but these tariffs, Al, ask him, what has worked? Who's tried to do this? This has been 30, 40 years of this coming, and it's gotten so bad our friends have been screwing us for their benefit. And it's like, great, but all Trump's saying, look, we'll treat you the way you treat us. And when people start seeing 270% tariffs, 150% tariffs, 100% tariffs, and they see how it's screwing our people, this is just going to make Donald Trump stronger.
The last 2 sentences make me wonder if he was on something. I mean, seriously, I'm going to repeat it because I have the written version of it. When people start seeing 270% tariffs, 150% tariffs, 100% tariffs, and they see how it's screwing our people, then it's going to make Donald Trump stronger. Now, there's a huge disconnect there, Devin, because if we have tariff, how is putting tariffs on another country going to be beneficial to our people, our country? That's going to ultimately be screwing our people. And it's not going to make Donald Trump any stronger. But it's not about making him stronger, Tom Emmer. It's about making the American people stronger. And oh, by the way, Tim Walz has been leaning in for a long time for farmers and been leaning in a long time for something that you haven't stood for, and that's our children. And I'm talking about children in Minnesota. They're not our children, but they're our children. So, it's once again, when I put out the question about are Democrats in disarray, or is there a perception that you may have about that? I think we should be really also looking at the Republican Party being crazy. The Dems may be in some sort of disarray and can't line up on the Senate side to get their votes right. But I would say that the House of Representatives, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. And when we come back, I want to lay out something that you should be aware of as we talk about this question, or we have this question about the Dems and their disarrayship, if you will, to make up another word. All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we will talk about what's happening with this question about Dems in disarray. Number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Okay, so the comments are coming in right now. So one of the I'll just read this to you as best possible. Yes, disarray AOC and Fetterman even noted it passionately. They're in disarray. Did not. It's about what they vote, not what they voted for, but are they in disarray? I would agree with that. Disarray, yes, they are leaderless. Is it Schumer, Jeffries, Pelosi, or someone like AOC, or senators who are speaking out? It seems that those who could be considered leaders are trying to figure out if they want to be more like the GOP or keep being good lefties. We need someone who can herd the cats of the Democratic Party, and that's yet to be decided. That's coming from Lois. I would agree with the last two sentences, particularly so with what Lois said, and I would also agree, yes, it's less about how they voted and the perception that AOC and Fetterman are talking about. So that being said, here's what I'm going to share with you guys, because some may know this and some may not know it. Meet the 10 senators, and this is where I was headed before. Meet the 10 senators that actually were part of the final vote to break the filibuster. Those Senate Democrats, who some say betrayed the party and the country, that really, in most recent couple of days, exposed the disarray. And this is why I wanted to ask the question. And we got another one that says, let's see. Absolutely, we are in every way on the local, state, and national level. Yeah. So here's the list of Democrats. Durbin from here in Illinois. Angus King, Brian Schatz, Chuck Schumer, Cortez Masto, Fetterman, which is why I drew the line between Fetterman and AOC, talking about the Dems being in disarray. Peters, Maggie Hassan, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Jeanne Shaheen. Those are the 10 Democrats, if you don't know, I'll send it to you, who voted for this CR to break the filibuster. So you need to know who they are for obviously active reasons. I think that Fetterman has been showing signs of being less inclined to support the people who voted for him in the state of Pennsylvania by, in his way, going to Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring. And I know that some people said to me off air that these folks have difficult upcoming elections. Not every one of them does. And I'm a little bit challenged, is probably the best word, that Durbin, particularly because he's from Illinois, I'm not surprised by Fetterman, because he's shown his colors in recent weeks or months, particularly. Yeah, and thank you for the text I received. Jeanne Shaheen is retiring next year, so that's kind of a week A way of voting. She would have been better off. I mean, if she's retiring next year, you would think that she would have voted in a way that's going to support more people that are still going to be in the fight. So this is the part where I go down the road of, yes, they are. And what I look at it is the disarray part is what Lois said in terms of we need someone who can herd the cats of the Democratic Party, and that's yet to be decided. I agree with that 1,000%. I was saying in part last week that the fact that there is a incongruent message, let alone the votes that they may make. See, the House was lined up and they got their marching orders and they followed them. And particularly so when it comes to the fact that Hakeem Jeffries was able to keep his caucus together, whereas Chuck Schumer was not. There's no way that himself and 9 others should have not lined up. And the argument, listen, the part of my conversation today is going to be about how other Democrats are looking at what went down. And I think that's not a sign of disarray. Let me try to thread the needle here. The disarray is when the leadership doesn't have their caucus in order, and when they come public, they show that there was no leadership in how they voted. Jeffries had his caucus in order, as I said last week, and they voted in line with what makes sense for the country. Not their particular district, but first for the country and then for their district. And some may say I have it out of order, but at the end of the day, they were in alignment how they voted. The Senate, on the other hand, was not. So when I asked the question, I would now layer into that, is the Senate in disarray versus the Democratic leadership in its entirety on a federal level? Because the Senate showed that their leader, the Senate leader, did not have a grasp on where these other 9 senators were, or maybe he knew. But either way, the public display of that lack of leadership is in Schumer's lap. Jeffries did, I would say, a better job of keeping his caucus together. Now there are Democrats that are coming out that are speaking about it. That is the part that I think a lot are taking away as being a message of being in disarray. Because you've got AOC, you've got Pelosi, you've got Jeffries that all had what I'll call similar adjacent thoughts about the Senate, more specifically Schumer's leadership. And I'm going to take a couple of calls, but then I'm going to come back to things that the 3 of them had to say and then what some of the general public is saying. We're going to end on some positive notes today, but this needs to be talked about because we can't fix it. We can't fix Republicans, but we sure as heck have to fix ourselves. I said last week, I'm not blaming Republicans for how they voted and what they did. We know what they were going to do. It's the Democrats that have to take responsibility here. And for those who say that, I'm always just favoring the Democrats, I favor the Democrats because that's the party that we are, as progressive liberal Democrats, trying to strengthen. But when they step out of line, not step out of line, that's the wrong way to put this. When they do something that shows that there's a disconnect, then we have to call it out because that's the only way we're going to fix things as we go forward, is to have things lined up and have our messaging be consistent. And if they got to fix things, fix that stuff in private before they come to the public with it. And that's what happened last week with the Senate. And Chuck Schumer he's got a whole responsibility. And particularly since he voted in the way in which he did, it signaled to the other 9 that it was okay. And I think a lot of Americans, I watched and listened. Lots of Americans are highly disappointed in that space. Devin, let's grab a couple of quick calls. Let's go to Steve in the Gold Coast. Steve, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. And I, too, share your frustration. And I think on this one, after 30 years in public policy, this was a half dozen on the one side and 6 on the other for me. There was no good way that this was going to move forward. In the end, they control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House. And the gentleman who's sitting in the Oval Office is quite frankly disturbed. And this aside, they are already on a road in which they are trying to shut down as much of government as they can, literally shutting down entire departments, purging others. So the argument was that, well, if you gave them the shutdown, they really don't care. This isn't Newt Gingrich's government in which a government shutdown every day hurts them, and they're worried about the political ramifications going forward. They're already trying to shut down government in many ways. So what possibly could this do to harm them? That was the way that Schumer was looking at it. And so there's a policy side of this, and then there's a politics side of this. And I agree that the Democrats are in disorder. Our greatest ally at this point is Trump and his buddy Elon Musk. I think that they are going to get trounced in the midterms.
Steve, listen, man, I'm with you in that space. But if they keep stepping on their tongues, it's going to make what could be a fairly good path get screwed up because people are going to turn away.
Well, I think that people are going to turn away more so from Republicans, especially under the leadership of Donald Trump and, again, Elon Musk and others. And we need to have our house in order because we need to offer them, voters, being them, an alternative, a vision, because it's not enough to simply be against Donald Trump and MAGA. You've got to offer Americans a vision moving forward, and that needs to be, something that Democrats need to come together and say, this is our cohesive vision of what America is going to look like under our leadership. Now, you have two opposing views with regard to what happened in 2024. One says that we didn't cater enough to our base, and therefore that's why we lost. Another one says that, we needed to cater more to the middle of the road, and instead we were perceived as being much too radical, and that's why we lost. And so that's a question, each of us needs to address in terms of how we go forward, who our nominees are going to be, and what the party platform is going to be. I don't have the answers, but I do know that, again, Donald Trump is our best ally going forward. And as long as he continues on this route, I have no doubt that we are going to seize the Senate, we are going to seize the House, and he, in his last 2 years of his presidency, he's not going to be able to accomplish very much.
What do you think about this? Going back to what you said about its policy. One side is policy, one side is politics, and I want to just take another moment to kind of delve into that because your background is very, very relevant here. Do you think that because the House didn't need the votes, the Republicans in the House didn't need the Democrats' votes, that's why they lined up by comparison to the Senate, where the shutdown would have been put in the Senate, in the lap of the Democrats in the Senate? Do you understand what I'm asking? So that's part of it.
Well, in part, I mean, this is what the founders intended. They intended that the Senate is supposed to be the deliberate body. They're not worried about getting elected every 2 years. Basically, you sit down as a congressman, and then you have to start running for office again. And so you sort of cater to the whims and woes of the populace. But senators are there for 6 years, so they can afford to take positions that aren't terribly popular today, but might turn out to be the right thing to do a year or two down the road. Because again, they're not being reelected every couple of years. And that's the question. I mean, did Chuck Schumer and then a few other, senior statesmen say, what, this was the lesser of two evils. We don't control the House. We don't control the Senate. We don't control the White House. But the people who do control government right now are seeking to purge government and eradicate entire agencies, entire bodies. So this idea of a shutdown used to be the case that if you had a shutdown, the party that was seen as responsible for it suffered tremendously. But it's been made quite clear to us that Donald Trump doesn't care about his poll numbers, doesn't care about how bad he looks, doesn't care about the fact that his own party, I mean, for people who don't know it, Republicans went home and decided to have town hall meetings, which went terribly. They were booed off stage by their own voters. I'm not talking about in liberal states or districts. I'm talking about hard red districts. And the word came down from on high. Don't have these anymore. We are not doing well. Our own voters hate us, and they want us to do something about this nutcase that's in the White House. And so that's where we stand. So, like I say, I mean, moving forward, we need a cohesive message as Democrats, and we need to give Americans an alternative to crazy man.
Yeah.
And it's not enough just to be against Trump and MAGA. You have to give Americans a vision of what you're offering.
Something to vote, not just to vote against, but to vote for. So, yeah, Steve, I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Good to hear your voice. Glad you're well, and thanks for your contribution,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Have a great day. All right. Let's take a quick break, guys. Number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. You guys are lighting it up, the text messages, and I'm glad you are, because that tells me that you're plugged into what's going on. And do I have answers for all this? I have some answers. And the number one, I come back to this. The Dems have to fix the stuff behind closed doors. Coming out in public with it is not a working solution because the media is not on their side. And I got a great text from Arizona that said the right wing, Richard, the other main problem the Democrats face is right wing media. They should know by now, and thank you for that, that if you come out with an element or even a sniff of disarray, then it's going to be, that's what the media is going to focus on rather than the actual vote itself. And we've seen evidence of that by how the right-wing media has portrayed the Democrats. Now, what's my answer? My answer is that they've shown that on the Senate side at least, the connected message wasn't there. And it needs to be talked about because as we go forward, I'm going to come back to something that Steve said. We have to be prepared to deal with this. And, Steve made a good point about Trump not giving a darn about his poll numbers. And I don't know the answer why. I have my suspicions. And the first thing that went through my brain when he said that is he just wants to wreak carnage and harm and create openings for his corporate buddies to be able to do whatever they're going to do and to tear down the systems. He's on a retribution tour, so he doesn't have to care. And he knows that he's not going to get – listen, people will die. I'm not saying that there should be violence, but people will die before Donald Trump is elected a third time. I'm saying that today on March 17th, 2025. I'm not talking about and advocating for violence, but people will die before that happens. And I'm not saying about who, what, when, or how. So that's part of why he knows deep down inside he's not going to get reelected another time. So I think he's just, I don't give a F about it. I'm going to do what I want to do, and they're going to have to make me stop. So when you have that attitude, I'll use the best term analogy I can come up with is when you have nothing to lose in sports, you kind of go for certain things. I mean, Devin, you've played sports, you know how it works, and you follow sports. When you have nothing to lose, you play with reckless abandon, and Trump's doing that right now. He's playing with reckless abandon. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it about that. That's what he's doing. And in the wake, and so many of us are in the wake of the harm. All right? I think it's that simple. And then we can, he can do in his mind, until you stop me, I'm going to do everything that's harmful and painful and retribution-like that I want to do, that pops into my brain at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, let's talk about this from another perspective, something that Steve said, which I really appreciate Steve's contribution. Short memories. 6 years versus 2. Steve's right. 6 years as a senator, 2 years versus a House of Representative. That is part of this. He's right. Understand that's the civics part of this. A senator can, I hate to put it this way, but can kind of get away with the vote today, Devin, if they're not. I mean, good example. Jeanne Shaheen, she's not running for re-election. So she kind of has that had to be part of her motivation. And others that aren't worried about it right now because their next cycle, and there are going to be other votes that they may be able to cover their bad vote for now in a year or so if they're not up for a re-election in 2026 or 2028. Could be. Don't know, but I think the short memory part of this, meaning that voters have short memories, may be part of their strategy or rationale, maybe is a better word to use. So there you go. Let's try to get a couple quick calls in before we get to the top of the hour. Let's go to Earl here in Hyde Park. Earl, good morning. Welcome to Choose Views.
Hey, man. How you doing? Good morning, Richard. Happy Irish Day.
We'll call it. Hey, I've got this great story. I'm not going to tell it today. I'll try to get to it this week because it's an everlasting story about being Black Irish. It's a cool story. But go ahead. Go ahead, man.
Okay, I got a different point of view than what you and Steve were talking about as far as having a top-down approach to dealing with the problem with our messaging. I think that we can also have a bottom-up approach from our messaging. If you look at what's happening at Tesla auto dealerships all around the country and around the world, the people have risen up and came out with a specific message that says Tesla is bad, do not buy Tesla, blah, blah, blah. And so what I'm saying that is if we're not getting the proper messaging that we think we should be receiving from our quote-unquote leaders, we should rise up and give them the message. We should take to the streets and announce what we want them to push in our favor and concentrate on. Just like what the people are doing for Tesla, we should be doing the same thing about various issues that the Democratic Party, 4 or 5 issues that the Democratic Party should be pushing hard to, the people should be pushing hard to get our leadership behind and have them run to the front of the parade and push that for us. So there's more than one approach to leadership, and the leadership could come from the bottom up as well as from the top down. And sometimes you just might have to, light a fire underneath the leaders from the bottom up, just like what we're doing with Tesla. And I just don't think there's enough black faces at Tesla when I see the protests going on. I see a lot of white faces. That just might be a demographic location.
Some of it's that, but it's also it's also another thing that is very quietly been put out there. And a lot of black leaders have been saying, we did our part and we're taking a break right now. And the people that didn't show up in the 2024 election on all levels weren't us. And I think that's part of what you're seeing, Earl. I know that. Well,
but I don't agree with that, man.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I agree with it.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that again, let me go back and start over again. Part of what that is that there are a lot of folks that are saying that black folks did their part leading up to the 2024 election and got let down by the folks who are showing up at Tesla. And so that's what that's the dynamic. I don't fully agree with it either. I'm just saying that's part of what you're saying, but it also is demographic location of the dealerships. We know that to be a fact. So,
all right, I'm gonna bounce off, but I hope that you and Steve are correct about the prospect of us making some inroads in the House and in the Senate. But I'm less optimistic than both of you. And my wife also shares your optimistic opinion. I think that because of the right-wing media...
Listen to your wife.
Like I said, right-wing media is pretty strong, and gullible people, as we saw in Michigan and various other places around the world, around the states, voted against their own interests. Yeah. So I'm a bounce, man, but thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Thanks,
and
glad you're well.
I'll be listening for that story about the Black Irish.
Got it. Okay. All right, Earl. Good to hear your voice.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's try to squeeze in Dave real quickly because we won't have much window. Hey, Dave, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, Richard. Hey, you're enough of a wordsmith. If I were to say a legacy of looking forward.
Okay.
Is that a reverse negative? What is that all about? A legacy of looking forward.
Well, I think what how you could potentially process that is if you're talking about what someone's legacy has been, that they were an eternal optimist. They were constantly looking forward. They were constantly trying to find a better way. That would be how I would take those words and pull them apart. And then, just to maintaining a positive, optimistic attitude and forward-thinking mindset. That's how I would say that's how it would hit me.
Sure. Well,
about someone that has a legacy of trying to push toward future achievement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. So now, you remember the guy that's been trying to buy Clarence Thomas, or he apparently did.
He's already bought him.
Harlan.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Harlan Crow. And he's got a website, Crow Holdings.
Right.
And that's the lead. That's the lead there. So you're describing a positive movement, but that's Harlan Crow they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So Crow Holdings, I don't know if you noticed it, but Rachel Maddow on Friday did this piece about how Congress is trying to sabotage itself by saying that Trump can't be challenged. And Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, has declared that Congress is in a frozen state, that the date of, like we think today is St. Patrick's Day. Well, according to Congress, it's last Thursday. And it'll be last Thursday for months to come because Mike Johnson doesn't want to challenge Trump's fake emergencies. Mm-hmm. And so it's ceding power. Actually, New York Times has it as ceding power. And so I'm just wondering, I'm mixing in Harlan Crow there because if we're going to be frozen in time, maybe we don't need to pay rent to Harlan Crow.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll expand that a little bit, Dave, to the fact that a lot of people are saying, well, if our benefits that we've earned are going to be taken away from us, then maybe I shouldn't pay taxes on a federal level because this is a federal benefit that I paid into. It's not an entitlement. I'm supposed to get it because I earned it. So if you're not going to take care of that, then I'm not going to pay taxes on a federal level. I see there's a way to kind of manipulate and bend ourselves into that thinking because, if we're going to be frozen in time with where we are with some of these observations from, the leader of the House of Representatives, then maybe we should be frozen in time in some other areas. I don't know. I'm just saying, but anyhow.
Well, that's right. The reason I gave the website Crow Holdings, crowholdings.com, apparently he doesn't just own buildings down in Texas, but he has some in Chicago.
He's got holdings all over the country, in fact. David, we got to get to this break, so I appreciate your call this morning. Thanks for calling. We'll talk to you soon. 773-763-9278. 7 o'clock, guys. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Welcome back, progressives, to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Make sure to stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show, my radio sister on the West Coast. Tom Hartman Show, professor of everything progressive. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. And, of course, Patty Vasquez, my bookend that's driving you home. Well, we've got some really good leaders in the state of Illinois, whether they be our congressional leaders. And I know right now we've got some issues with one of our senators, and rightfully so, based on this most recent vote and occurrences. But on a state level, and I've talked about this for months, if not, over a year now, not only do we want to have a stronger presence on a federal level, but we want to make sure that our state legislatures across the country are filled with people who know what they're doing and are forceful and fight for bills that are important in the state that they're elected in. But also what I've come to realize that pretty much any bill in one state is going to be important to contiguous states and throughout the rest of the country. With us this morning is one of our own state representatives who has been leaning in hard on making sure that environment is protected, and that would be our own state representative, Tracy Katz-Mule from the district up there in the Northbrook area, part of Chicago suburbs. Good morning, Representative, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Do I have your district? It's 57th district, right?
It is the 57th district, centered in Northbrook, but also Wheeling and Glencoe and other suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tease you a little bit because when I looked at the map of your district, I'm like, how do you make your way around? Because it's definitely kind of a hodgepodge of, sort of put together, but I mean that in the most positive of ways, because you kind of got you got to get around, and your district is not just lined up as a rectangular or a box district. It's connected to a few different communities, right?
Oh, this one runs east-west all the way from the lakefront in Glencoe all the way across to Cook County, Buffalo Grove. So definitely back and forth. Need a car for this one. So
Good for you. Well, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. I definitely want to talk about one of your recent bills, but I also, because you've got a few, by the way, but I also want to have an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to our audience and let folks know a little bit about you. Take a moment, let us know, kind of your ascent, because you're what I'll call a recent, I won't call you a rookie, but you're a recent state representative. But let our audience know a little bit about your background and how you got to the point where you're now one of our top representatives in the state of Illinois.
Oh, thanks so much. That's a really kind thing to say. One of the nicest compliments somebody gave me when I arrived in Springfield, about 2 years ago, was that I did this sort of the old-fashioned way. This was the fifth time I had served in public office. I did 2 terms on our local school board. The last 6 of those years as president, including going through the pandemic. So cheers to anybody who was on a school board during the pandemic. And also have served 2 terms as a Cook County committee person for the Democratic Party up here in Northfield Township. So when I got down to Springfield, it was a new environment, but certainly was very used to working with a board and with people from all over the county and state to make good policy together.
You had I guess what we'll call it, the ascent that also included attending Georgetown, and then you got your law degree from the University of Chicago, and you practiced before you basically decided to get involved in politics as a committee person in Northfield Township. So that gave you a good foundation, I would say, to understanding legislation and how to use the phrase, how the sausage is made. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I am on sabbatical from practicing law for the most part now, but in some ways I've never felt more like I was in law school, because this is really the place where we take a look at law from a big picture lens. How are we making good choices that think about law and economics, law and human behavior, and are we setting up laws in the right way to encourage people to make smart choices for all of us as a society? And that's just really a privilege to be in that role.
Yeah, and you've done. I mean, this most recent, and we'll talk about this from the lens or through the lens of what I like to say is environmental, and this is your freshwater conservation bill. Tell us a little bit about that and why that bill is important, and then what are some of the what I like to put the dotted lines to other parts of the environment that this bill represents.
Absolutely. This was an initiative that was brought to me by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, a body I was obviously very familiar with already from my work as a committee person, had helped over many years of cycles to elect all of the members of that board and see the different ways that they helped develop policy there. They have 7 large facilities across Cook County, which focus on things like treating and reclaiming wastewater. That's really important. We live in an area here where we have access to one of the greatest freshwater resources in the country, but we know that we need to do everything we can to maintain it and to use treated water instead of fresh water wherever we can. So the proposal focused on updating the Illinois Environmental Protection Act, which had already been amended to make clear that treated water could be used for things like irrigation purposes, but it wasn't explicit about other uses. And as we see more and more industrial uses come online that need to use water for non-potable, non-drinking purposes, think coolants, right? When we have these big data centers that need liquids to come in and cool, if we can use treated water as opposed to fresh water, we're making smart choices for everybody all around. So the heart of this initiative was getting explicit permission in the Illinois Environmental Protection Act for using treated wastewater for these kinds of non-potable, non-drinking industrial uses that benefit everybody all the way through the cycle, right from the government to labor to industry to the environmentalists. And it was great to see that coalition of people come together to unanimously back this bill.
Well, it's incredibly important because, with the current law allowing, as I understand it, and again, a lot of times I have to read these things quickly and think, how does this tie into the legislation? But we can use the water for things like irrigation and things like that. But we haven't really, and now that the bill is in place, we hadn't really put this in place for the industrial uses, and to some extent was kind of wasting by not having that in place. Am I correct in how I'm saying that?
Yeah, and everybody's gut instinct here was this is covered by the intent of the law, but it wasn't explicitly in there. And obviously everybody wants to be careful, have the law be precise. So that's why we went in cooperation with all of those different agencies and partners to ask that we explicitly spell out that industrial reuse is also permitted and, in fact, an environmental and corporate good goal.
Yeah, what's interesting, too, is that this is a way for us to reduce taxpayer costs. I mean, we always look for ways to – I think sometimes when voters, consumers, citizens think about reducing cost, they think about it from let's cut something. And I'm an advocate of not that we don't cut certain things where there is, for lack of better words, not the most efficient use of certain things or our resources, but sometimes it's reallocating, reapplying things. Let's do this over here because then that opens up so much more opportunity to maximize that resource. I think that's what has to be part of the conversation around reducing costs is to maximize the resources that are already in place. This bill does that, right?
Yes, exactly. It's that green recycling triangle that we think about, reduce, reuse, recycle. This is a perfect application of it in an industrial context, in the context of saving one of the resources, our fresh water that we are all most caring about right now.
Yeah. Representative, tell us in your observation and your experience, and I hope I'm not going too far afield here, why us folk out here have a blind spot when it comes to conservation and recycling and energy conservation and being more green or being less waste. Why is there a blind spot there in your experience?
Sometimes there can be just because we have such tremendous proximity to the Great Lakes. We haven't lived in one of those states where there are notices that come out frequently from our local government or state government or county government advising us this is a week to be extra careful about water or rules about flushing toilets, right? These are things we know about, but we don't live with them day to day. It doesn't mean it isn't somewhere we could end up if we're not careful. So doing everything we can to take these steps affirmatively now, it's smart policy. It is unanimous bipartisan policy. I was thrilled to see that vote out of committee be entirely unanimous and bipartisan.
Yeah. Did you feel, as you were leading up to this, did you feel that there would be a partisan pull? In other words, folks that may not see this as necessary and may be wasteful in and of itself. Did you feel that there might be some of that going on in the run up to this?
I felt good about this bill going in because of the coalition of people involved. There were affirmative proponent witness lists filed from both industry and labor side of the coin, from government and public, from environmental and good governments like the League of Women Voters. That sense of allies coming in boded well. And of course, we took the time to affirmatively have the conversations with every member of the Energy and Environment Committee to make sure they knew what this was about. In fact, most of the questions I had were about understanding exactly what it meant. If you don't live and work in this environment, you don't necessarily know what it looks like to reuse treated water, right? So giving that cooling station data center kind of example to people, you could see the light click on as people said, yes, I get it. This is something I want to be part of. And again, really emphasizes why the human element of this work, really talking to everybody, making sure you're engaging about the bill, not just sort of the dry legislative words on the paper happens. That's how you get everybody on the same page, understanding not just the words, but what they mean and what the goal is.
And not to sound, pie in the sky or with rose-tinted glasses, but at the end of the day, if you, me, and three other people are walking down the street, we're walking down Michigan Avenue, we're walking down the street in Northbrook, we don't necessarily know the political stripe of the persons that might be coming in our direction. Your family and my family, we're walking down the street, and we don't know. But what we do know, and this comes back to what you said about the human element and the importance of that connection and communication, is that the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and all the rest of those resources are important to all of us. It seems as though, and help me out with this because I know our listeners want to know your observation on this, that when it comes to environmental issues, they become partisan because some people may not believe that we have a problem, and others know that we do have a problem. So how have you been able to navigate that void where some people are just like, we don't have a problem with our environment. We don't have a problem with this. And others are like, well, wait a minute, how come we've got water tables that are messed up? How come we have folks who are in communities that they suffer from the lack of environmental preservation?
Yeah, I think it starts with really good listening. When you're engaging with people about the bills, first of all, you can get a sense of whether they understand at a base level what you're trying to do, right? This is a little bit technical, the area in which MWRD was looking to advance the legislation. And so that first level was really important for this bill, getting everybody on the same page with a handful of factual scenarios that they could relate to. Maybe you were familiar with this in the irrigation, farming kind of use, but the idea of how these would be piped into a data center was new, but accessible, right, once you took the time to talk and speak about it. And then sometimes you go one more level and people start to worry about cost. It's not that they don't understand an environmental crossover, but they're trying to weigh it out and prioritize, right? Is the value we're going to get in terms of environmental savings going to be outweighed by what the costs are? And those conversations, too, they can be tackled with data and information before you leap to that last sort of just doubters, deniers kind of bucket. Mm-hmm. And that's really, for the most part here in Illinois, the very smallest amount. And if you can get those first two groups together, we understand what we're doing and we have a handle on the cost-benefit analysis, or properly weighing environment in it, you can get a really big coalition together on most things most of the time. So doing the work to get everybody in the first two buckets on the same page, that's where you can really get the legislation done.
One of our listeners sent a comment that said some of this lack of understanding or knowledge or partisanship is driven by corporate interest who don't want to see their ability to do what they do be stunted by legislation that would force them to be more responsible.
It absolutely can be. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It absolutely can be. Part of what made this legislation unique was the fact that industry was at the table. The Illinois Manufacturing Association was a proponent. The Illinois Commerce Commission was a proponent. Everybody could see where this was going to be net positive to access their non-potable cooling liquids through MWRD and similar facilities, and good for the environment at the same time.
Do we have any big data centers coming into the state of Illinois that indirectly or maybe directly would be benefactors of this repurposing of water from a cooling standpoint?
I can't give you the name of a specific facility right now. That was just a really good prototypical new use that people are familiar with that we could share. We expect there'll be ones that have some decent proximity to the facilities. Like I mentioned, our Cook County facilities for Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. There's 7 sites that are spread all over the county, from Des Plaines to Skokie to Cicero to Hodgkins. So this is going to affect facilities all over Cook County, which is wonderful to see.
Because if it's going to affect Cook County, the second largest county in America, by the way, which I know you already know, but if it's going to affect Cook County, it's going to affect our collar counties and our neighboring states. I mean, that's why your bill is so doggone important, and it's not just even though it's locally passed legislation, a locally effort. It's a national issue. And this is one of the things that I've really, really been just pushing is the local items, the local issues are regional, they're national issues. What do you see? And I'm not trying to ask you to look into the looking glass, but what do you see as the impact of this type of a bill on other states and the country at large?
I hope other states will look at this, too, if they aren't already experimenting in this area. As we noted right at the top, this legislation already existed here in Illinois for irrigation. Obviously, we've got some of that use here in Illinois, and a hat tip to the Cook County Farm Bureau, but even more so all over the state of Illinois. So I'm hoping people are seeing this, that if they haven't gotten into the industrial or irrigation spaces already, they hop in and join. It's really a smart path that can bring together all of the different sectors, labor, government, private industry, to make a good step forward for the environment.
Got it. And I know that this is something that you're probably navigating all the time, and that's some of the federal, or let me be more specific, some of the current administration on a federal level's position on EPA and, what we've done with the Paris Agreement and how we've kind of are isolating ourselves, or at least the administration is trying to isolate us from being involved in better conservation and more appropriations toward a better environment. How are you navigating that, or what are your observations there?
That's absolutely a worry. It's one of the reasons I thank the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District for standing up and saying this is a time to make the Illinois Environmental Protection Act stronger and more explicit so people are comfortable taking advantage of all of these uses. We've obviously seen all of the national EPA leadership staff here in Illinois turn over in ways that are really worrisome, changes to facilities and staffing. So doing everything we can at the state level, especially in the blue states, but I sure hope in the red ones too, to recognize that this kind of smart reuse of water is good for everyone.
Yeah, we're with you on that. Just this year alone, you guys, for those of you who are listening, this is how busy Representative Katz-Moll has been. I'm not going to list them all because it's too many to list. Just this year alone, over half the bills that she's leaned into are ones that are around protecting our environment. She's definitely had her thumb on the scale when it comes to education, but she definitely is an advocate for making sure that our environment is taken care of. And it's great to see the leadership that you've shown. And frankly, we know that all of our representatives in the state of Illinois don't always get along on every single thing, and that's fine. But boy, oh boy, you guys are really taking the lead from the governor on down to show that Illinois is the place to be. The Illinois elected officials are doing their job in the state to really, make this place a great home for so many people. And I personally want to say thank you and appreciate the work that you are doing, and certainly the colleagues that you have in the General Assembly to get certain things done. So we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And for the whole House and Senate Green Caucuses, everybody appreciates everything you're doing to talk about these issues, to help us build allies. Thanks to the Illinois Environmental Coalition, who is a terrific advocacy partner that brings together all of the different sectors of environmentalism in Illinois to make sure we do this work as smartly and seamlessly as possible.
What are you going to be, we're coming to the end of the first quarter, calendar quarter. What's going to be on your agenda, some top items in the second quarter of this year?
Oh, this is deadline week right now.
Yep.
This is when we want to get things out of the House committees. So my focus is on squarely getting everything we can move through. This one did pass early because it was a nice, tight bill with a big group of proponents. This week we'll be working hard on issues to expand education. I'm working on the Community College Baccalaureate bill in cooperation with the governor's team. That one's really important to me. I'm working with Equality Illinois on some quality legislation. And of course, like you shouted out, education. Coming from school board world, I understand all the ways that we can make that work better and tighter for schools all over the state. So all three of those policy areas are going to be front of mind for me as we're working to get things through committee in the next 5 days.
Well, hopefully that happens. I know you're leaning in hard on that. We would be honored to have you back again in the weeks to come, maybe when we get into the second quarter and you kind of working through the machinations of all the legislation that you're proposing. We can have you back. We can talk about, you can give us some updates in terms of things that you're working on. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Would love to share more updates. Hopefully good news on many of those fronts.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us, Representative. We really appreciate it. How can folks find you? Say, how can we volunteer? What are you doing? What can I do to help in the work that you're doing? I know our listeners want to know what they can do to be involved.
Hop online, staterepkatzmoll.com is the website. There's also, of course, email and social media where you can follow along. We really love the engagement. We love to hear what things our voters are interested in talking about, and great ideas come from voters. A lot of my legislation, both this year and last year, came from people in the district who reach out to problem solve, especially young people. I love running bills that come from students. So please, anytime something comes up, give a ring and we'll see if there's something already going on or if it's something we can add to that drawing board of ideas for the future.
State Representative Tracy Katz-Moll, 57th District of Illinois, doing the work and getting things done. We appreciate you being with us this morning, and we look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
There you go, guys. She's getting it done. And I was really excited about having her on today because, the reason I asked her the question around what are our blind spots when it comes to conservation and to recycling and to doing a better job? I'm always asking myself, okay, how should I have gotten or disposed of that? Should I have done a better job there? What am I doing to make it better? And so that's why I asked her the question about, what are our blind spots and what can we be doing? So give her a shout out, State Representative Tracy Katz Muhl. Its last name is spelled Katz, Katzmuhl, 2 words, Katz Muhl. So reach out to her office, see what you can do to get involved. She's definitely someone that's leading the way in that space. And we like having folks throughout our wonderful state of Illinois. We're setting an example. I say this all the time, and I'll say it again and again. Our leaders are setting an example. Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, even our our federal senators, certainly Ms. Duckworth doing great work. But our state representatives, our assembly folks are doing the day-to-day things here that I feel are important, and that's why we love having them on to talk about what they're working on. So take a quick break, Dev. When we come back, we will have a conversation with our friend Mike Nellis, and we'll try to squeeze in a couple calls as we wrap up the show today. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Welcome back, Progressive. 773-763-9278 is the number. We'll try to get to your calls before we wrap up the show. But right now, and shout out to Representative Tracy for her work. Give her the love she deserves. Reach out to her office, follow her, and see what you can do to get involved. She's one of those leaders that, let her know. That's how we keep, like I said with Representative Buzinski, U.S. Representative Buzinski last Friday. We got you. We got you. We want you to know, keep fighting. And right now, that's part of the big conversation. But this morning, as we keep moving along, we're going to have our good friend Mike Nellis on with us this morning to chat about a little bit of everything politics. Mike, good morning and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Man, I'm doing all right. I had a little bit of one of those morning sinus headaches. I told Devin, I said, if you see me like rattling my head around this morning, how are you doing, my man? How have you been doing the last 2 weeks?
I'm all right, but I managed to get RSV thanks to my kiddo. So if you hear me hacking up a lung at some point in this, let me know.
Man, listen. All right, Mike. Listen, I'm gonna be a big brother here. Take care of yourself, okay? Please.
I will. I will. Look,
Go ahead.
I'm day 6, so I'm doing okay, and I've just been going around blaming RFK Jr. for it. So
that's
really all I can do.
You drive, I'll do the wet work. Listen, there's so much that we can talk about in this short time, but that's why I love having you on for a brief bit every couple of Mondays. And this past week was a doo-doo show, is the word I'll use when it comes to how our Democratic leaders in Washington, thank God for great competency of our state reps like we just had on with Representative Tracy. But, man, last week was certainly part of the chamber was they lost their damn minds. Let's chat about it. Let's just dive in and talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, the 10 Senate Democrats voted to advance the continuing resolution. I think Democratic primary voters are pretty frustrated with that. I mean, look, my thing about it is this. The dividing lines of the Democratic Party right now are between people who are ready and able to fight in this moment and people who are not. And there's all this talk of a Democratic Tea Party or people being really frustrated and wanting to throw out their representatives. I don't know if that's going to happen necessarily or not. But if it is, it's going to be hard to identify the ideology behind it because I think Democrats are just ready to fight right now. And what Donald Trump is doing in Washington, he's hurting people. He's letting Elon Musk cut things like cancer research for kids. They're targeting Medicaid. They're, doing all kinds of horrible stuff to green card holders and permanent American residents. And we need elected officials to fight, and I think anybody who isn't showing that fight, who isn't gritting their teeth and prepared to push back against this, is going to be in political danger. And I don't blame Democrats or anybody right now for being frustrated. And over the weekend, there was this CNN poll that has the Democratic Party's approval rating at 29%. A big part of the reason our approval rating is so low is we've lost a huge chunk of our base. Democrats are frustrated right now. It doesn't mean they're loving what they're seeing in Washington. Trump is underwater right now, too. He's not popular, and his policies are pretty unpopular. but we gotta show some teeth and fight.
Yeah, man. I will tell you that the people who are getting the most positive responses right now are the Democratic elected officials that are willing to come in and knock over tables and say a few curse words and get bleeped, because there are everyday folk who are frustrated beyond belief, as they should be, as we should be, and they want to hear somebody use a few expletives to say, the old line from the movie. I can't think of it, and I think I'm mad as hell. And was it with Network? I'm mad as hell. And I'm not going to take it anymore. We want that. Want that to be heard. And you talked about the poll in terms of the numbers, and I saw this great article from Jason Easley that talked about, voters are fed up and they want Democrats to fight by any means necessary. They want a less of Dr. King and a little bit more Malcolm X right now. And I mean, tell me I'm crazy, or tell me your observation in that space.
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think people want us to fight right now, at least our people, right? And look, Democrats can't get elected if they lose their base voters, so we've got to do enough to fight. But I think also independents want us to fight too, because our numbers with independents are bad too, and Trump is deeply underwater with independent voters. So it's a mistake to act like this is 40 years ago when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill and the Democrats are making deals and trying to get stuff done, because Donald Trump isn't trying to create or help anybody right now. He's just trying to destroy stuff, all right? And maybe some of it is worth destroying, but most of it isn't. And he's trying to establish a new world order that doesn't make any sense, and he's just making a lot of stuff up. And we can't work with a guy like that. We can't work with Mike Johnson, because they don't actually want to help people. All they want to do is put money in the pockets of billionaires. The entire plan right now is to cut Medicaid, Social Security, other critical government programs that people rely on, so they can give billionaires like Elon Musk another tax break that they don't need. That's the whole plan right now. When they talk about anything that's like culture war related or society related, it's just a distraction from that, because all they want to do is hoard more wealth for their biggest donors. If we're not fighting that, then we're going to look weak. And here, one thing I know, I believe this pretty strongly, the American people don't like losers. All right, they don't. And if we look like losers, if we advocate like losers, if we talk like losers, we're going to lose. People are not going to gravitate towards us. And right now, you see the biggest names that are sort of rising to the top of the pile in the Democratic Party are the people who are good at articulating a vision, who are good at fighting. And that's why, if there was another poll out this weekend where people were asking them, who do you think best represents the Democratic Party's values? And at the top of that pile was AOC right now. Now, it's only at 10% because there were a lot of people picking a bunch of different names, but AOC was at the top of that pile because she is the most visible Democrat, clearly articulating what is wrong with what's happening in Washington right now. That doesn't mean we should necessarily nominate her for president in 4 years. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I don't know if it's the right idea. But the people who are advocating and actively fighting are the ones that are going to get a lot of support. And to his credit, we've talked a lot about Senate Democrats here, but House Democrats kept their caucus together. Only one Democrat voted for the continuing resolution. So give Hakeem Jeffries his flowers there. He kept his caucus together and forced the Republicans to have to be darn near perfect in order to pass that CR, which will have political ramifications for them in the midterms.
That's why, and Mike, thanks for breaking that down that way. That's why I've been saying since midweek last week, if you don't listen, you and I are conversing about something and we've got an issue to resolve. If we got issues with each other, but the goal is to get us across the finish line, then you and I need to bury all of our stuff in private. And when we come out in public, they need to see, man, there's no space between Mike and Richard. They want to get some stuff done together. And that's what didn't happen with the Senate last week. Be darn anything else. All the disagreement and whatnots and reason, Shaheen's leaving. She's got, next year, and, Durbin maybe. Who knows? It doesn't matter. But what matters is the optics showed that they were in disarray and then they weren't fighting in the same direction. And I think that's got more people frustrated than, it's like if you're going to go down the wrong path, okay, but at least all go down the wrong path at the same time. And that's part of the big tent effect, and that's part of the herding cats effect. But at the end of the day, that's where I believe they dropped the ball. And on by contrast, to your point and what I said last week as well, Hakeem Jeffries did not let that happen. And he's fumbled the ball a little bit or bobbled it a couple times in the recent weeks and some of the things that he said about policy and this, that, and the other. But when it came to this vote, he had his folks lined up. And I think that if that doesn't get fixed in the Senate, there are going to be some people that are going to lose their seats that are going to get primaried. I can't tell you, Mike, the number of text messages I've gotten this morning of people that are like, Durbin's got to go. Durbin's got to go. He's Krishnamurthy's a replacement. That's a big part of what's happening right now, is that people are saying they got to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my biggest frustrations with what happened last night is we let the narrative get completely away from us. Yep. Like, if we were going to let the CR pass, there was a different way to go about doing that. And instead, the story all last week was about how Democrats caved. It was a big political win for Donald Trump, and the Democrats look weak, and that's a problem. Like, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't agree with almost anything that he does. But the voters reward him because he seems like a fighter, because he seems tough. Now, I think if you throw a punch, he's like a schoolyard bully. He runs away. But, he can project strength in a way that the Democratic Party currently can't.
And
that's a huge problem.
The mainstream media is also complicit in that space because we know that, and we have to include that in the process. But this is how Eric Grant, who hosts the Family Meeting, and I've been talking about this for years, irrespective of what the mainstream media does, the Democrats need to always create the narrative. And to your point, is right on. They did not own the narrative this past week when it came to the CR. Right. They could have very easily said, "This is what one of my colleagues, Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics, and I talked about." They could have simply said, "Here's why it's bad," or "Here's what's in it. Here's why it's bad for you, but here's what we're going to do to make it right or better." It's real simple. They could have done that, presented that, and said, "And we're not going to vote for it." And then it would have made sense that if the government shuts down, it's because these things over here are awful, they're disgusting, and they're going to harm you in this way. And why wasn't that such an easy thing, particularly for the Senate, to do? It boggles my mind. And it says, though, but it does say to me, Mike, that's why the leadership's got to change in the Senate.
Well, look, the whole Democratic Party is struggling, I think, and we've got to do a few things that are going to change the tide here. The first is we do need wholesale generational change in the Democratic Party. We need new candidates and elected officials that are going to rise up, that are fresh faces to the American people, who talk like real people, who have a real perspective on the fights that we're having right now. And that's where, like, I'm getting kind of frustrated as I'm watching folks that are, 80, 85 years old run for re-election in the House right now. And, and I love them. Like, so many of them are people that, like, I've worked for and I have a lot of respect for, and they've done amazing work over their careers. But, like, at a certain point, you've got to let the next generation of American leaders step up. And, like, we're in this situation we are today because of the current generation of Democratic politicians. We have to start giving way for new folks. And then the second problem is Democrats have gotten so far away from being able to talk in a way that is relatable to most people. And some of that is a generational gap, but some of that is also this, like, overly poll-tested, very careful language where we're trying not to offend anybody. And Republicans have gotten really good at, like, they talk really basic. Even Donald Trump, who is, in my opinion, an absolute weirdo, talks much closer to a regular person than most Democrats do. And he at least talks in a way that has a lot of perceived authenticity to it. I want Democrats to be able to find our version of that. And it doesn't mean we start lying and making stuff up or start fighting for the wrong things. But we should, on the CR, we should have picked 2 or 3 critical, simple talking points and repeated them over and over again, and not expect the mainstream media to do our job for us. We keep expecting CNN, MSNBC, New York Times to do our jobs for us, to educate the American people, when our job is to go out there on alternative media, on YouTube, on Twitter, et cetera, and just bash the same couple of talking points in.
If they had taken, and that's why I said, it's not even about messaging. It's about your word, the narrative. But I said, make it simple, make it plain. I was talking with Representative, U.S. Representative Nikki Brzezinski last Friday, and I said, Representative, I'm going to sound like I'm begging you, but I'm begging you. Please tell your colleagues to make this stuff plain. People are begging for it. I said the 69 million voters, whatever the number is, that didn't vote, that chose to stay on the couch. They want to hear a very simple message. And that very simple message is going to resonate because people are tired of having to sift through, because everybody's bombarded with all this information. Like, I mean, you and I've got to put up umbrellas up because of all the stuff that we get, doing the work that we do. And so, imagine somebody who's just like, oh my God, I don't know which direction to turn. A simple message pierces through all the garbage. And I appreciate you saying it out loud, that's the thing that whether one says that we lost the middle class, I don't agree with that. I understand what people are trying to say with that. I think what we've got to work harder on is a simple message that says to people, that's what I've been looking for. Someone just to make it plain, and I can get on board with that.
I mean, most people are just trying to get through their lives right now. Their wages aren't growing. They're struggling to put food on the table and retire with dignity. And the more that you can just position yourself as I'm fighting for you, the more that you're going to win over voters like that. And Democrats lost the working class in this last election, which to me is massively embarrassing. And it's a big part of the reason that Donald Trump won. Like, we had erosion, not just amongst like the white working class, but amongst people of color too. And a lot of it is because, a lot of it's inflation. And I think we have to acknowledge that. Like, some of it was our fault and some of it wasn't. But we have to win these people back, and we're not going to do it without a clear message. If you ask voters across all spectrums, including Democratic Party voters, what the Democratic Party fights for, people almost universally say they're fighting for someone else other than me. And that is a huge problem. If people believe that Democrats are fighting for someone else and not themselves, they're not going to vote for you, period, unless they have a big heart, which is nice, but we know that not enough of the country has a big heart at this point. And so most voters are fundamentally self-interested. So if we can simplify our message, get on the same page, elevate a new generation of leaders who can meet the moment, particularly in the media environment that we're in, then just start talking like regular people again and start advocating about, look, we're fighting for you. We're not fighting for billionaires in Donald Trump's cabinet who are just trying to get a tax cut. We're going to make your life easier. We're going to help you buy a house. We're going to help you retire with dignity. We're going to help you get a good paying job. We're going to help you have enough money to survive and have a family. If we can get back to that and keep it really, really simple, we're going to be okay, because Donald Trump has given us plenty of openings to get back into the fight here, because he's not doing anything to reduce inflation. He's fueling inflation. Housing prices are going to be more expensive because of these dumb these dumb tariffs on Canada, because the lumber prices are going to go up. Grocery prices are going to be rising. The stock market's in the tank. So we're going to have opportunities here, but not if we don't get our act together fast.
Yeah, but at the same time, along with that, what we have to be really careful of is the number of people who are fighting and have been fighting for that. It's a threading of the needle scenario, and yes, we need to have a more simplistic, forward-thinking message that includes the people who feel like they've been left behind. But I'm also a proponent of this. Our society has gotten lazy and not involved, and you can't. I've always said it's great to have that illuminating, illustrious Barack Obama, Bill Clinton-esque figure at the top of the ticket. At the same time, people have got to stop being lazy and be willing to make the effort to get involved, because that's part of the problem. And you can't a singular issue or a number of issues to a great extent isn't going to change that, because voter turnout has to be, I believe, a large. The responsibility factor's got to come in. And we also have to bring into this conversation, Mike, how much voter suppression has taken place. And so we can throw a lot of darts at Democrats, but at the same time, that's a structural issue that we don't deal with enough. And I think it's a fault for us, the guys like you and me, the folks like you and me, to not recognize those things, and also recognize the other component is that a lot of folks didn't vote for Vice President Harris or other Democrats because they're stuck in their ways as much as anything else. They don't want progress. They do want status quo. And that's part of all that. That's a big part of this. I mean, we can throw darts at ourselves only for a certain period of time before we have to throw darts at the others, in my experience. We got to let the others know that your way is wrong. Your ideas are wrong. They're not as good as our ideas. And at the same time, and this is where the tough work comes in, pulling those people off the couch.
if we want to pull people off the couch, we've got to give them a reason to get off the couch. And I hear this from a lot, and I'm not coming at you, Richard, but I hear this from a lot of liberals online where they want to lecture people who didn't vote, or people who may have made a really tough call to vote for Trump because they were mad about inflation and now they have buyer's remorse, which there are a lot of people who have buyer's remorse right now. But we have to give them a reason. And I tend to take, when I do my post-campaign ops, I go, all right, let me take radical responsibility for everything. What could I have done differently here? I can't control how voters are going to be. I can't control the media. I can't control the algorithms on, Meta and X and all these other sites. But what can I do differently, and what could my campaign have done differently? And I think more, at least Democratic campaign operatives, need to get into a place where instead of blaming our losses on everything else, is to focus inward on how we can get better at running campaigns, how we can get better at communicating. And to me, voter suppression is very, very real. I want to be super clear about that. And there are a lot of people who were not able to vote who would have voted if they could have. And when the next time we're in the White House and the next time we have full control of Washington, which I believe will happen again, I want to see Democrats tackle voter suppression with the same urgency that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are gutting cancer research for kids.
Attack it with a sledgehammer, frankly.
Yes. Yeah, I want to break up all the things that they're doing. For God's sakes, Mississippi, the voter suppression in Mississippi is insane. If you really get into it, it's absolutely insane. And we should be able to compete there, but we can't because they've essentially created a one-party state. And there are a lot of other things in North Carolina, what they've done with the legislature, with Wisconsin, what they've done with the state Senate. It's absolutely insane. But in terms of people who are apathetic, or all the people who voted in 2020 for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris but didn't come out in 2024, we didn't give them a reason, and I hold us responsible for that. I don't think anybody owes us their vote. And I think we as practitioners in the space.
She even said, and this is the part where, this is where we all have to put our minds and go in a similar direction. Vice President Harris said numerous times, I don't assume that I'm getting anybody's vote for free. I've got to earn it. And she spoke to that on numerous occasions. But I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people were not willing to cross that line. And I think that there were lots of things that were provided, they were given to the voters as reasons to vote for her. But at the same time, I believe, because I've watched the numbers just like you, that a lot of people that's not the message that they wanted. They wanted a different message. I think the message was put out there, but I think a lot of voters, to your point, wanted a different message, that the ones that didn't vote particularly. And that seems to be, that's our biggest fight right now. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so. Look, we had a lot of people who, didn't vote for Kamala Harris because of Joe Biden's record on Israel and Palestine, right? Which, don't get me wrong, is a very legitimate issue, but obviously Donald Trump is a million times worse on Palestine than Kamala Harris ever would have been. And I think Kamala actually had a pretty good series of talking points on that. But look, I think that people probably do need to start having a broader understanding of political power, because when you vote in Republicans, these are the things that happen, right? Yeah. I hear a lot from my friends, sometimes you got to let a little kid touch the stove when it's burning so that they understand that it's hot. And I go, yeah, I'm with you for that. I got a 5.5-year-old. Sometimes I let him, fall and make a mistake, but I don't scream and lecture him afterwards. So I think this is where I'm a little bit concerned about a lot of my fellow Democrats. We're so mad about this last election. We're so mad about what's happening in Washington right now, and we have every right to be. But when people start to wake up, we have to welcome them in.
We got to be ready for we got to be ready for them to have, come back to the table and said, okay, yeah, I'm ready to get in the game. Speaking of that, let me ask you this last question as we're running out of time. Who is it right now? And this kind of puts you on the spot, but in a fair way. Who are you seeing that's emerging as the vote, not the vote, but the person or a couple of persons that are emerging right now? Because that's one of the questions that's out there. Who's the person that's the voice?
It's hard to say. I think the most visible person in the Democratic Party right now that's articulating an opposition to Trump is AOC. And you just see her out there doing a lot. I have a lot of respect for her. I have a lot of respect for Jasmine Crockett, who I spent a little bit of time with about a week and a half ago during Trump's speech in D.C. I think the two of them are doing a really good job of being visible, but they're primarily speaking to Democratic primary voters. Gavin Newsom's out there with his podcast. I don't really care for it, but I at least kind of applaud him for trying. I'm looking for, who are the people, and I'm thinking this in terms of 2028, who we put forward as a standard bearer. I'm looking at the candidates that are heads down, doing the work, taking serious actions. And I would give a shout out to a couple people here because I think the Democratic governors are doing an amazing job. I'd give Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan a whole lot of cred for doing an amazing job of protecting her state and staying focused on the job that she was elected to do. J.B. Pritzker here in Illinois is another one. Andy Beshear in Kentucky. Those are kind of who I'm watching out for right now. I think the future of the Democratic Party right now on a national scale is going to come from outside of Washington because we have so much Democratic talent in the states. I think somebody's going to rise from there to be the leader of the party as we approach a presidential election in 2028.
I think it's going to happen sooner than that. I think it's going to happen as we get closer to the midterms, and if not later this year. I mean, they're going to keep their heads down and keep working, but a lot of it's going to be contingent on the end of their next term. And Governors Whitmer and Pritzker are both in that phase of where they are. So I agree with you, and that's what I've been saying that for months now, that we are probably going to see it come from that crop of people. And I'm not counting out Vice President Harris either. And as people start to emerge and see where we head, but our governors are definitely going to be a big part of the conversation and a big part of the mix. So I think that we have to just pay attention to that and keep pushing the narrative, to your point earlier and to mine is for a long time. Singular message, make it plain, make it easy, and help to bring people back to the table with an open hand, hopefully. So, Mike Nellis, thanks for being with us this morning. Thanks for chopping it up with me. We look forward to having you back in a couple of weeks. Feel better, man. Get healthy, okay?
Thank you. You too.
All right. Talk with you soon. All right, guys, we got to wrap it up. As it happens, we get through these things kind of quickly. I apologize for not getting to your calls today. Hold your point. Make a note of it. Give us a call tomorrow, and we'll try to get you in then. In the meantime, as I always say, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.